Hi everybody, welcome back to Garage Studio Modelers. I'm here with Harvey Lowe. Let's not do that today. And we're progressing on the BT7 build. As you can see here, we have it's all been washed. The filters have been applied, as I mentioned last time. And today we're going to work on doing some mud. So this is the completed side or this side of the model is complete with the pigments and some of the washes. I've laid the base pigments down on this side, and we'll go in and enhance it with some washes. So we'll be using some of the oil brush colors, and then for some of the horizontal surfaces, we'll start getting into the AK pencils today. So we'll start with that, and we'll also do some streaking using some of the traditional streaking products from MIG and AK. So. And then the next topic that'll be up will be this Panzer 38T, this new Tamiya release that I picked up recently from Wheels and Wings on Boxing Day. And as you can see here, it's already partially built. This will be a completely out-of-the-box build. So I'm not going to talk a lot about the construction of it. We'll focus more on the finishing techniques and whatnot. But I'll do a bit of when we get around to doing the first episode on this, I'll do a bit of a walk through the construction just to warn anybody of any pitfalls. But it's a Tamiya kit; it pretty much falls together, so no major issues to date. So, but yeah, we'll get focused on this and sort of get into the meat of the weathering process, which again is my favorite part of the build.
You know, we are sometimes so busy in life that sometimes I don't even have time to read the comments on these. But the comments coming in so far have been wonderful and great.
Yes,
and,
yeah.
Right, my apologies is sometimes I can't even get back to responding to everybody in time, but I'd like to. But one of the ones that was brought to my attention, Dave, this morning was a couple of the guys had mentioned your modulation technique. And something about they basically say they start with the same color light.
Oh yeah.
And you do different. And I've always said that Dave here is like the master of modulation because you use different colors and you end up with the effect. Whereas I use a single color, and I think the gentlemen on the comments do the same. And they lighten and they darken. How do you? What's your secret in doing different colors?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you can certainly stay within the same color. So if I wanted to stay within the same green that I used and darken it with like a dark brown or a black, or lighten it with like a flesh or a white color, you could do that. I just sometimes I see colors and I think they would go well together. So it's what you're comfortable with. If you are staying within the same tones, though, I might, even though I just mentioned using the black and the white, I would kind of stay away from using black and white because I think, especially the white, because I find that kind of desaturates the color.
Some people use beige or flesh.
Yeah. I think using, like I use the for the third highlight, or the second highlight, I guess. I use the Radome tan color.
Yeah, I remember.
To highlight the green. So that's an example of staying within that same color band. But I'd stay away from the white in particular because I find it just kind of bleaches out the color. But that's perfectly viable. I just found two colors that happen, and I think with the airbrushing and the modulation, you can kind of get them to blend. I think you can get almost any two colors to blend. It's just how do they look. So I think as long as they're within the same color band, I think that works. I think it works fine. But you can, if you're more comfortable staying lightening and darkening with something other than white, I think.
But I think you're at the stage, right, where we mentioned before on the videos that I don't have a step-by-step formula in modeling, and I think we've talked about that. But would it be safe to say that after you've done your modulation, you're ready for the weathering, you've done the weathering, you don't go back to modulation? Would that be? I don't.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of key steps to follow. Like you do your primer, then you put your color on, you modulate it, and then you're done with that.
Right.
And then when you're doing the weathering, and that includes the washes and whatnot, I think that you can go back and forth and do.
Yeah.
Right. So you can go up and down and back and forth. But once the color's on, unless you're going back and correcting something. And then, but if you are correcting it, you're potentially dealing with slightly different tones because you've got some weathering and some streaking and some filters and whatnot on there. So, but I like a good point. Like I put some damage in the screen here, and as a result, I've got some of the underlying brass that's showing. So I'll have to go back and cover that.
Right.
So sometimes you have to do it for a correction, or I'll get creative with putting chips to cover those colors or something. That's the nice thing about armor modeling is you can just chip it or throw mud on it, right?
Great.
Yeah, so that's I think that's that. So.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it then.
Yeah, so we'll get at it, and we'll have you kind of throw. I guess we got another favorable comment about the format that Harvey and have, where whoever's working on the model will be on screen, the other guy will be off screen. We'll be throwing questions back and forth, so we'll continue that format.
Sounds good.
Seems
Off
to
screen,
work,
making smart remarks.
That too.
Some 6 feet away.
That's too. That's always fun to deal with, right? So.
All right, look forward to it.
All right. Yeah. So let's get at it. Okay, so we're going to start with doing some streaking on the turret here, and again, so why the streaking? I think the streaking creates a nice kind of variation on the vertical surfaces. So last night before coming in this morning, I did some streaking on this here. It's very subtle, so hopefully Robert can pick it up, and hopefully the lights are working here enough to catch it. But you can see there's some kind of streaks here. This is the only part of the turret that I've done. So we'll do some streaks on this side here, and the colors I'm using are going to be Panzer Gray, or streaking grime for Panzer Gray from AK, and Rain Marks from MiG. So, but you can use anything. I'm using 2 colors. I usually use 3. I did use a gray on here as well. I did use the Starship Filth or Starship streaking as well, just to get a different tone in here. But I realized when I kind of took it off, I couldn't really tell there was gray on there. So let's just go with 2 colors and see how that works. So with a nice thin brush, and this is what is this? I think this is a 3-0 brush. Just get a little bit and just kind of draw it kind of down. Again, you're following the path of gravity and rain. Just kind of streak it down. That doesn't have to be perfect. My hands aren't terribly steady. But that's a bit much on the brush. Take some of that off. You don't want to put too much on there. Like I might put a streak from here down, just to accentuate some of the bolt detail. Work that into the weathering process. And you can see it's not all from the top. Let's pick up just a little bit more. Maybe just kind of redo this one here. Oops, see, that's a little bit much, but again, not a big deal. You can kind of take all that off as we go through. So you see, I'm not very steady, so they're kind of crooked streaks, but it doesn't matter because the action of kind of working in and pulling it off will take care of that. Oops, that's the wrong cap. So it's.
Dave, do you let that dry before you start smoothing it out?
You let it
dry a bit, right?
Yeah, like 5 minutes.
5 minutes?
Yeah,
sometimes I use a mini hair dryer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I'd have been smart enough to bring one to the ground this morning, I'd have done that. But
would also increase the heat in this place, but hey.
Oh. Can't wait for summer.
Yes.
Then Harvey would be complaining it's too hot in here.
Well, we're up in the Great White North in Canada, so it does get cold up here.
Yeah, well, it's been pretty mild so far.
Yeah.
I have to say. So now I'm working in a lighter color. This is kind of the rain streak color. You can use oils. Like we'll maybe add a couple of streaks here using oil paints. You can use the pencils too, which maybe we'll try that a little bit later, just to show what those work like in terms of streaking. So you just create a bit of a varied effect, just like that. Looks horrible right now, which is a good sign. And the other thing that's fair to mention is I know, and I think I mentioned this on camera, I know when I just finished doing the modulation, I was looking at the color, I'm like, yeah, that's a pretty bright green. But as you can see here with the various effects of the filters, the streaking, the washes, that it kind of cuts back the color. So now, this color here, at least to my naked eye, and I'm not sure what it's going to look like on camera here, but that looks about right in terms of the, kind of the final tone you want to get it to. So just to reinforce the part when you're first modulating, you should try and make it look very, very stark, very, very gaudy, very, a lot of contrast. And you should almost look at it and say, wow, I've gone too far with that. But it all comes back down in the weathering process. So we'll let this dry the old-fashioned way, and we'll come back and start working it in. Okay, so we've let the streaks dry. for about, and all you need is really about 5 minutes or just a couple of passes with a hairdryer if you happen to have one. And now I've taken this brush, so I get a nice wide flat brush, soft, and I've wet it with thinner, and I've kind of removed most of the thinner, so it's just barely wet. And just with a kind of an up and down motion, just start working it in. And what I'll do is I'll just kind of go over, and you kind of work it in very slowly. You can see already this part here is being blended. Let's kind of go over to the front. Just up and down like that. So it doesn't take very much. And if you do too hard, if you go too fast or too hard, you'll end up removing a lot of it, which you don't want. You just want to control the effect. So you can see it's getting worked in. And again, if you're not happy with something, you can pull it all off. That's the nice part about this. So just kind of gradually, and you can see there's variations between the kind of the dark brown streaking and the kind of the rain mark streaking. And just be careful, like you see here on your horizontal surface, you just make sure you work that out because you don't want any effect on your horizontal surface. You want to make sure it's all on just the vertical surfaces. Reload the brush, clean it off. You're just kind of up and down, just kind of working it in. And then if you want to pull it off, you can just pull it down. I mean, logically, things would accumulate towards the bottom of the turret, or the bottom or the lower half of the vertical surface. And you can see it kind of gives a kind of a varied. It's like almost like a varied filter. It's one of the reasons why I like doing the streaking, is it just adds that little bit of tonal variety. We're getting close in terms of where we want this to be. I think we're done. Maybe just a little bit more working it in. But make sure. And you can see off camera here what I'm doing is I'm just wetting the brush and just kind of wiping it on a napkin.
What's the thinner you're using again, Dave?
Oh, I'm just using the odorless thinner. This is, I mean, you can't, the writing's washed up. It's just the MIG odorless thinner. Mm-hmm. But you can use, we were talking about the Humbrol enamel, just any type of enamel thinner. The odorless I like because I find it to be the least harsh, rather.
Yeah, I find that too, that I've used both the odorless and the Humbrol. They are the same type of, I guess, chemical product, but I do find that they react quite differently depending upon the oils that you use.
Yeah. Like I just find, I mean, this is a little bit more expensive, the odorless thinner, but I just find it more consistent and safer to use. I get more of a kind of a repeatable effect with it. So I think so that looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. So what we'll do on this side, we'll repeat this all around the vehicle here. And then what I'll do on this side is maybe I'll take some oil paint. Let's see, what do we want to use here? Let's get some of this on the palette here because we're going to use this later for the washes, or not the washes, but the kind of working with the pigment effects on the running gear and whatnot. And I'll just pick a little bit up. Again, use your thin brush. And I'll just add kind of a random streak. Like, we'll go right through the white of the numbers. How's that? Just like that. And maybe another one over here. Pick up some more paint. Now I think MIG have this other product called streaking brushes or something like that, which is, I think, the same product but maybe thinned a little bit more, and you can just apply it right out of the bottle. But again, I think that's more a convenience thing than anything else. So we'll put 2 prominent streaks here, and again, they don't have to be perfectly straight because you're gonna kind of work them in with the brush. And we'll just let that dry for a minute, or set for just a couple of minutes off camera, and then we'll come back and kind of work these guys into the finish. Okay, so we've let the oil streaker paint, dark brown paint here dry, just a bit, just for a couple of minutes, and then again the same process with a slightly moist brush. You're just kind of working it up and down until you're happy with the effect. You're just kind of feathering it into the finish. And what you're doing here is you're just creating a more prominent streak. I might pull it up a bit. And I think that looks good. Just pick up a little bit more thinner here. And again, you're just barely wetting the brush and you're getting most of it off, so that it's, if you put too much on, you'll just pull everything off. So the less thinner you have on the brush, the more of a controlled effect you can get. So what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of narrowing it a bit, and then we'll kind of work it in like that. So I think, and just holding it up so you can see that it's kind of straight. It kind of looks kind of straight. So let's go attack this other one. Again, you can come back, because of the longer drying time with the oils, you can come back and fix it after. Do the same thing here. Maybe this one will kind of spread out a little bit. And just kind of, remember, pay attention to the nearby horizontal surfaces just to make sure you're getting everything off. I'm just gonna kind of straighten it out. Again, you want to make sure it's kind of just following gravity. And you can kind of bring it up a bit. And again, you're just kind of moving around the oil paint on the surface with your streaking motion here. You're just creating some more. Yeah. So this is where you're kind of doing more, like the effect we did on this side here that we did on camera was really just to kind of create the overall palette, if you will, and then here, or the overall effect on the surface. Get some stuff off there. And then here what you're doing is you're creating a more targeted effect. And I guess again, you could use the enamel products for this as well, but I just find using the oil paint. And you can take just a touch of, you can do the same thing with regular oil paints. I just happen to have these out, and I find these a little bit more convenient to use. You can kind of use them right out of the bottle. There. Oh, it's a little bit messy. I'm not happy with that. Let's go back and fix that. You can see I've actually moved some of the oil paint over to this side here and created like another little streak, so we'll work with that. And then we'll kind of just feather this and clean this up. I'm just going to hold this up and see how that looks. I think that looks good. Bit of a random effect. Just to show that this has seen some action. It's been through some things. And if you wanted to add like what I might do under here is I might add a bit of a rust streak So you could do that with a separate, actually, let's do that right now. I'll use like a rust color. And the same type of thing, just get a little bit, and you don't need a lot. That's all you need. Even that's a bit too much.
You got to be careful with rust, right? I find it's a color that can easily overwhelm the model.
Yeah. Yeah, you can. In reality, these things didn't rust too much. But let's do it right under this port here. So I'll just create a bit of a streak here. That's all you need. And then the same thing, you just kind of pull it down. Up and down, just, yeah, and all you're doing is just feathering it in, so there's just a hint of it. Yeah, I think that looks okay. Let's take a look at that. Yeah, it looks good. You just feather it just a bit more. Yeah, just a hint of. I'm just going to straighten this out. I'm going to hold this up in a way I can kind of see it. I'm kind of doing it backwards for the camera, but there you go. Looks pretty good. Maybe a slightly more pronounced effect, so maybe just kind of cut it back a bit. And again, cutting it back just means you're just going to work it in a little bit more. There. Again, just to create a different color tone. This may be the only rust streak I do on the turret. But that's your streaking. Now you can also use pencils for streaking. So let's go onto this side. So this side I haven't done anything. But we'll kind of just do a test. And one thing to mention. So water. So these things work with water. They're water soluble. And what I do is when I use the water, I add just a little bit of dish soap to break the surface tension. That's the only reason why I add the dish soap. And what I'll do is I'll just dip the pencil in, and then on a dry area of my palette, I'll just kind of create this pool of color. So the water is kind of reacting with the pencil. And either I can actually draw the streak on with the wet pencil tip, or if I want, I can let's get rid of the oil paint on this. Or if I want, I can just pick up a little bit off the palette here, and let's do another streak over here. Now these colors are a little bit more translucent. They're not as opaque as what you get with oil paints, I've found, but they do work out okay. So the same thing. I just wet. It's the same process as you're doing with the enamel or the oil products, but I just take a little bit of water. I wet my brush. I'm using a different brush because this is still wet with enamel thinner. So I'm using a brush here that I haven't used yet, and I'm just gonna same process. You're just gonna up and down, kind of just working that in. Need a little bit more water. And these will react, so they'll dry, and then you can reactivate them almost indefinitely with water. So you can see how I just kind of work it in, and then I can do the same thing. So it's the same process. It's up and down. It's just a different medium. So I found these pencils to be quite versatile, where you can use them for this type of effect. You can use, and we'll get into what we do on some of the horizontal surfaces a little bit later. But you can see how I'm just kind of. And I find they're every bit as versatile as what you get with oil products. So they're very easy to use. They're water cleanup, so there's that added convenience there if you don't want to work with some of the harsher solvents or odorless thinners. But yeah, that's not too bad. So what I'm going to do off camera is I'm just going to continue the streaking process using the same enamel products over the rest of the sides of the vehicle. And then we'll just kind of replicate what we have here. But I'll do that off camera. I don't think everybody needs to see that again. It'll be the exact same process. And then the same thing, I'll probably work in some of the oil streaks just to create some specific effects like we did here on this side with these guys here. So I'll go back and finish things off, but that's kind of the finished look that I was hoping to get there. Okay, so now we're done with the streaking. So I'll replicate that on, I'll do some of the streaking on, again, the kind of the horizontal, or sorry, the vertical surfaces on the chassis. But again, it's the same process, so I'm not going to do that on camera. So what I am going to focus on next is replicating this mud effect here. So last time we spent some time putting pigment. So this is the side of the vehicle that doesn't have any of the washes or whatnot on the chassis. So all this is just that mud, that Vallejo mud that we put on initially, and pigment that we fixed with the X20 thinner. So I've just carried this through the whole side of the vehicle here. And next what we're going to do is we're going to add some detail similar to what we did here, or accentuate and add kind of that depth of color by using washes to darken some areas, just to replicate where, maybe towards the bottom of the vehicle, things that still be wet. If they're wet, they're going to be a little bit darker. And also to work in some of these, like here you see there's these nice reinforcing bands and bolt detail and whatnot. So let's work that into the weathering process. And what I did here is I kind of highlighted them with the wash to create a bit of an outline, just to kind of make them pop out a bit, because they're kind of nice features on the side of the vehicle here that you don't always have to work with. So let's take advantage of that. So this is kind of the finished side. So let's go through and start working on this. So, and again, it's the same process. So I'm using, the only color I'm going to be using here is going to be this dark brown oil brush color from MIG. And I've already got some on my palette here from when we did the streaking on the turret. And what I do is I just create a bit of a wash. I'll just grab, now I'm using this brush here that I was using for water, but it's all dried up now. So I'll just take a little bit and then create a bit of a pool of wash. And the nice thing about doing it this way is that you can kind of control the consistency of the wash. That depends how thick or not thick that you want it. You can just add oil paint or thinner to make it thick, or to reduce it down a bit. So let's start. I'm going to start here. So what I do is I just touch, and you can see how, again, working with this, like I'm just kind of doing a bit of a wash, and then I'll kind of add, go back and get some more, maybe make it a little bit thicker, and just add some thickening down here where it would be a little bit darker. I'm just kind of working it in. So why am I doing this? Well, I'm doing this to create some depth. Just, again, if I go to this other side of the vehicle that's finished here, what I want to try and do is just create some variation in the tones of the dried pigment. And again, as they get towards the bottom of the vehicle, things would be, would be wetter, as there would be more mud, more contact towards the bottom here. And I'm just trying to simulate that effect and get that depth of color as a result. And you don't need to use a lot of different tones. Like all I've done here is I've just used the pigment mix, and then I'm using this dark brown mix, and I'm just going to work it in and vary it. So we'll let this. So I just added. We'll just focus on this one section here. So I'm going to let this dry just a little bit, and then what's going to happen here is you can see where the thinner has kind of leached into the pigment. There's going to be a bit of a tide mark effect, and I'll show you how to deal with that and get rid of that, and how to blend this in. And it's actually, you'll probably still do it while it's wet. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clean off my brush here, and then I'm just going to, and it's the same again. It's the same, you go back to the same thing where you're just taking a barely wet brush with odorless thinner, and you can see so you're going to have a tide mark here. And this is where I've added the color. So again, there's a pretty harsh demarcation area. You want to kind of blend that in. So while it's still wet, I'm just gonna blend it in. You're just using a stippling motion, just to reduce that, eliminate that stark demarcation line. I think that looks good. Again, because there's long drying time, we can let it dry and then see what it looks like when it dries. So yeah, so we'll kind of pause things here. We'll let this dry, and then hopefully we'll see a tide mark here, and I can show you how to deal with that. And we'll see a more graduated effect here in terms of the lighter tones, the darker tones towards the bottom. Okay, so we've taken a hairdryer to this to speed up the drying. And as predicted, there is certainly a very prominent tide mark. But so that's the bad news. The good news is that there's a nice, we kind of, with the blending motion that we did, there's a much more graduated effect here on that darker color, which is exactly what we were looking for. So now, how to deal with the tide marks? What I simply do is I'll just pick up some dry pigment. And again, this is the same mix that we used to create or to apply on the vehicle before. So it's always the same color. The mix of the airfield dust, dark earth, and dust, I think, or airfield earth. Anyway, I kind of talked about it in the previous episode. So what I do is I just unload most of the pigment on a piece of paper here like this. And then, let me put my eyes on here. And then with that same stippling motion, kind of blend out that tide mark. And you can see just with a couple of real quick, it's gone, virtually. Done, no more tide mark. So,
but Dave, if you let that dry a lot longer, would you be able to still get it off?
Yeah. Yeah, because all you're doing is you're just stippling on top. You're just covering it.
So, but if you let that tide mark leave for say 48 hours, could you still come back and get it off?
Well, you're not so much getting it off as you are covering it.
Oh, I see.
With the pigment.
I see.
Right? So you can let it dry indefinitely and come back and just kind of stipple over it. And then what I'm going to do is, so here's a nice effect, but if I wanted to enhance that, again, it's just a matter of applying pigment to it. So up here, if I just want to kind of blend that in a little bit more. So it's all about stippling and blending.
And it's all about hiding your egregious errors on this model. Would that be correct, Mr. Forrest?
Well, that's the nice thing about armor modeling, is that you can certainly, it's much more forgiving than just about any other aircraft or.
That's true. We'll do a few episodes on aircraft.
Yeah, for sure. And you can see it's as much as I hate to admit it to the aircraft guys out there, but yeah, you can't, like if there's a problem, you can't put a streak or a little bit of mud on an aircraft. That's just not going to look right. So let's go back and maybe just do the other side of this, and we'll kind of repeat the process. So again, pick up some of the wash and the oil. I have to say, the more I use these oil brushes, the more a fan I become. So the same type of thing. We'll do the exact same effect here. And then we'll just kind of... a guy like Rinaldi uses nothing but oil paints. Doesn't use any of the enamel products. And he's right. You can get all these effects just using oils. The products that are out there are really just convenience more than anything else. And maybe we'll just kind of work our way up here. And again, you're just kind of following. I'll kind of just work further down. So this is the exact same process I did on the other side that's finished. And the only thing that's left to do really on the other side is maybe just add some splattering effects. So I'm just making more wash and just kind of following. So here here it's like there isn't a lot of pigment. So it's already, but we'll just add this just to be consistent. And maybe just kind of accentuate that down here. And then maybe while we're at it, just do the same thing here using this reinforcing band. Just kind of just accentuating the line of this with that wash. And you can do the same thing on the top. And then this guy here. Again, they're nice features on the vehicle. I would say take advantage of them. Use them to help, just add something different for the eye to look at. And then there's these kind of panel lines here, and I think here. Well, it's kind of covered up with the mud, but anyway. Or here, sorry, here it is. Accentuate that. So the same thing, let's go back and kind of clean off the brush. And then with just thinner, and the thinner can be a little bit, this is a little bit dirty, and using this to kind of clean the brush. Again, the same type of thing, you unload it, and then we'll start, so that we're going to let these tide marks were formed just like they did on this side, but what we're going to go after here is we're going to start just blending in. Just softening that effect, like so. And maybe just clean up this side here. Actually, you know what I'm going to do while I'm here? I'm just going to create a bit of a wash and just pluck out these bolt details while I'm here. So again, you got some lovely bolt detail on the side, so use it just to create some visual interest. So I'm just doing a bit of a wash. And again, you're going to have the same tide mark issue. But that's okay. We can go back. We know how to fix that now. And maybe there's a way of doing this without getting the tide marks. If there is, somebody knows of a way, let me know in the comments. But if there is, I'm not aware of it. But I certainly don't know everything about this hobby. So I'll just go, so while I'm here, I'll just go and add, just again, working with that lovely bolt detail. That's the nice thing about the early war Russian vehicles is that there's a lot of lovely detail to work with. Well, I'll come back and do this off camera. So yeah, so we'll take a hairdryer to this, or actually maybe before we do that, let's blend that a little bit more. We didn't finish the blending, did we? So again, you can see the tide mark will form here, and then here's where we added the color, so I'll just go and blend that in. Again, stippling. Let's use a stippling motion just to soften that edge. Generally speaking, you don't want hard edges. You want to kind of soften and make the effect more
Dave,
gradual.
Your comment about how do you not get tide marks? You know how you don't not get tide marks? Just have me do your models. You know?
Have you do them? You've got a secret for...
Yeah, well, hey, just an editorial comment, you know.
Okay. Thanks, Harvey.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks,
Anytime, buddy.
thanks for that in-the-moment feedback.
Sure.
That's great. Isn't that the kind of the management philosophy? In-the-moment coaching? You're a piece of crap.
Yeah, that looks like a piece of crap.
Yeah,
that's exactly what I want.
In-the-moment coaching. Love it.
Great, Dave.
I love it.
It looks very 3D now, eh?
Yeah, you're just trying to create that. And I know from talking with some of the folks at the IPMS Toronto Club, I know this is a problem that people have with the tide marks. I just don't know if there's a better way to get around it. This is kind of the easiest thing I've found. So all I'm doing here is I'm just kind of cleaning up the surface of the reinforcing band. I guess that's what this is called. I'm not sure. You know, there's surprisingly little in the way of BT7, good BT7 references, I have to say. And the same thing. Again, just wherever you see kind of a harsh demarcation in terms of the darker color, just go back and kind of just feather it in with a brush.
Yeah, your comment on the references. I found too that I'm getting big on Italian submarines of World War II, and I find that it's very hard to get references. But guess where there's a lot? Italy, right? So
yeah,
perhaps there's some in Russia that.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some good. I just don't have.
It's not getting out there.
Yeah, I don't have them. Okay, so we'll let that. I think that's good for blending. So we'll let that dry. With the help of the hairdryer, so we speed things up.
Fantastic.
And then we'll come back and see what's left over in terms of the tide marks and anything else that we have to blend, and then we'll deal with that, and that'll deal with the kind of the mud on the
so the way the model looks like now, Dave, when you apply the hair dryer, will it still retain that look, or will the color slightly change because it's drying?
Yeah, it'll lighten up.
It'll lighten up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll lighten up a bit. So okay, let's do the hairdryer, and then we'll come back and see what's left. Okay, so we've taken the hairdryer, and as predicted, there are tide marks. And again, simply and I use this. I think I talked about this last time. This is a Gunzi brush, weathering brush. They have a set of two, but you can take any old brush and just kind of cut it down so that it's it's got a bit of a brush cut going here, and then. Simply with the pigments, just going to stipple them in, blend them in. So all of this is really just a matter of blending. That's the whole secret to life of weathering, and getting that. And you can see how here the tide mark here is gone. Just by simply stippling it in and just blending it out. Nice kind of muddy wet effect here. I really like the look of that. Let's go over here and fix this. And maybe just kind of soften the effect here, but that looks pretty happy with that. And again, the road, it's a shame almost because the road wheels are going to hide a lot of this, but let me just get a better perch here. I should really be wearing gloves, so not to get any fingerprints on anything, but yeah, so let's just kind of work in here. And all you're doing is you're just kind of, again, it's all, I keep saying it, but it's so true. It's just a matter of blending. And if you wanted to, you can incorporate a streak. But yeah, I don't know if it's worth doing here. And that is that. That's all you need to do. And if if something's stubborn, you can kind of just scrub in the pigments, and you can kind of work in some streaking there if you want. Like if I want to soften this a bit, you can do that too. There's a bit of a tide mark here, so let's maybe pick up a little bit more pigment. And you don't need a lot of pigment. You can see I'm just go back here. I'm just going to work this in. Same thing here. Maybe here's. I'll just add. And that's all you need to do. So hopefully the lights here are picking this up and you can kind of see what we're doing here, but I think that looks pretty good. So what I might do is I might go and add a little bit more in here, but you can see the difference. Like we haven't touched the front half, which is, you know, kind of this part here, and then here's where we have touch. You can see it's a much better effect. And again, all you're using is just one color, and just blending it in with the pigments that you have. That's it. Easy peasy. So let's the last little bit we'll do today is we'll work on maybe some of the horizontal surfaces we have here with pencils. So we'll just take a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll maybe add some discoloration and whatnot on this particular area here. But I think the pencils are really good for doing that. So we'll come back shortly and get right to it. These weathering pencils. So this is kind of the newest thing on the market for weathering models, and because I'm a bit of a hobby junkie, so I've been if something new comes out, I'll generally give it a try and buy it. And I ended up buying all of the pencils, all of these sets, and you can get them in one big set, or you can get them in these individual sets, or you can get them individually. So this is Harvey's set here, but I have the same set downstairs in my workshop, and I was a little skeptical about these things at first, but after using them, I really like them. I really love them. And now these things have been around in the art world for a while. I mean, these aren't new, but they're new to the hobby. And the color I use the most is this earth brown, which is 10028. You can buy these separately, and I find that this is kind of my my go-to color, much the same way that the dark brown from the oil brush dark brown is a go-to color for me. And again, using water, and the key here is to use water that has a little bit of dish soap in it, just to break that surface tension, so that the water, if you don't put the soap in it, it kind of beads up. It doesn't flow as well. If you add a little bit of dish soap to it, it kind of breaks that tension, and the water behaves more like odorless thinner.
And how much dish liquid would you put in that?
Just a touch.
Just a drop?
Yeah, like barely, not even a drop. A drop is too much.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just enough.
Oh, by the way, just on these pencils, Dave and I are give a shout out to our friend John Benani.
Yes.
Pittsburgh. Hey, John, because he got us these pencils, I think on a big order.
Yeah, when they first came out, he ordered a bunch directly
John.
from AK, and we were able to get them at a good price. So yes, thank you, John. Wouldn't be using these without you. So thanks again. So what I do, same type of thing. I just wet the pencil. I just work it, get a pool of color on the palette, and then you can either use a paintbrush or. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to focus on this area here, and I'm just going to throw color on. So you can use the pencil to in a very clumsy way apply. So I'm just going to work around, and I guess what I'm trying to simulate here is these are grab handles. So I'm going to simulate some dirt in and around the grab handles. And another way you can do it is if you want the more precise application, just pick it up with a pencil, or a paintbrush, and then apply it like that. And let's do this other one here too. Just like, you don't need a lot. That's probably way too much here, but. So you can kind of turn these into a wash. You can turn these into a fill. Just as how much you just add. Now I don't want to put too much in the middle because I want that kind of a bright green but maybe just around the edges. So I'm just in a very haphazard way, very randomly, just applying the color like that. Now this isn't the only way of applying the pencil, but the way I use them. And again, I've come to really, they're easy cleanup. maybe let's use another brush. Let's use this guy here. So again, take water, same, and again the same. It's all about stippling. It's all about working them in, blending. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, just with a stippling motion, just kind of start spreading this out and moving this around, just like that. Pick up some more water. Now again, I can't stress how important it is to add soap to break that surface tension. If you don't, now see, I put way too much here, so we'll kind of get rid of a lot of that just by kind of pulling it off. But you can see how you can create all kinds of different effects. And you can use oils. You can do the same thing with oils. It's just this is a different medium to work with. And you don't have, like, these dry fairly quickly on the model. But again, you can always reactivate them with water, which is the nice thing. And here what I'm doing is I'm not unloading the brush as much as I would with the...
Could you reactivate these pencils even after they've been there for a week, say?
I think so, yeah. Because if you think about it, this is sitting in a drawer for months on end, and then you just add water to it. So yeah, you can reactivate these indefinitely. So you can see how I'm blending the color out. And the nice thing is, because of that very feature, because you can reactivate these things long after, you can let things dry, see how it looks dry, and if you're not happy with it, just wet it again and you're off to the races. So let's let that dry and see what that looks like. And then we'll take a quick hair dryer to that, and we'll come back and see what we got. Okay, so we've and it just took a few seconds with the hair dryer. It's the nice thing about this is to dry a little bit quicker than the oil is. And you can see we have a really nice effect where, we have this kind of dirt built up on the outside and different tones. So I'm pretty, again, and that's by virtue of different densities of the same color. We've only used that dark earth color, and it's my favorite color. But I'm just gonna, there's a couple of things here. I'm just gonna blend these in a bit, and you can see very easily how it reactivates. But I think I'm pretty happy with that. I think we're gonna leave that as is. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So that's, again, just the way you can add some dirt and whatnot. If I wanted to, I could also work some pigments into that. I've done that in the past too. But just to create some, and I'll do the same thing around some of these louver covers here, and I'll show maybe in another episode how to create some oil stains and whatnot around. There's some interesting hatch detail here for, I'm assuming this is where you might add fuel or access hatches to do maintenance or add oil to the engine or whatnot. So there's all kinds of great visual or cues here that you can work with to add some visual depth to the model. So we'll do a little bit more of that, but it's the same process. And I'll probably use, again, I love that dark earth color. I have a few different pencils of that. But if we just to do a bit of, maybe a bit of black in here. Again, this is how easy it is. And I find maybe in this case it might be easier to work with a brush. So again, I'm just dipping the pencil in water with the dish soap. Again, dish soap is very critical. And we'll take our brush, and then we'll just add around this, just to create like the effect of like maybe some oil stains or whatnot. This is just pure black, but because you can control the depth and the opacity of it, that's all you need. And then what I'll do is I'll clean the brush off, and then just you can go right into blending. That's how easy this is to work with. Kind of like a water-based oil paint, really. Easy cleanup. And if I wanted to, you know, here I can incorporate different colors of these weathering pencils. I can throw in some pigment. There. If I wanted to put some like this, if I wanted to add some of this fresh engine grease or engine oil, I could. Right, just kind of work that in after this dries. But then once I layer something else on top of this, I'm not going to be able to get to this and reactivate it, right? So you have to be kind of careful with that to be pretty happy with your finish. But yeah, that's how easy it is.
Looks great, Dave.
Yeah. So so these things are very easy to work with, very convenient. Water cleanup. Yeah, I really I love them. Real happy with them. So again, thank you, John, for putting us onto these and getting these for us. But yeah, so I think that's kind of it for today's episode. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to finish up the streaking, finish up the sides of the vehicle here with the same process that we went through here on this episode. So when we come back, that'll all be done. Maybe I'll talk a little bit about some of the, like, I'll do more of this stuff around some of the oil caps and whatnot, or gas caps around the vehicle, and we'll do a few more details. We'll finish doing the road wheels, so we'll maybe talk about that next time. But now we're kind of into the final stages of finishing the vehicle, and then the next, we'll have to we'll paint the tools. We'll do the exhausts, and we got to do the tracks. The tracks will be another separate episode unto themselves. So we're so you can start to see that we're kind of into the home stretch here on this particular vehicle. So that's it for today. So thanks everybody for hanging out, and we'll look forward to catching up in the next episode. See you soon.